May 5th of 2005. And that was the day that I decided that I was going to take my own life. That I achieved the American dream. I have accomplished more in my life than most people could ever even dream of. And I was miserable. I was an NCAA All-American lacrosse player in college. And I moved in a world that was very misogynistic, very macho, strong. You lived with pain. You didn't talk about any sort of weakness. As a kid, that was very confusing for someone that was suffering so much. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't have the language for it. It's a Friday. It's a beautiful out. They're making plans for the weekend. I have the door closed and I'm looking out the window, just trying desperately not to jump. It's okay to be vulnerable, that you're not alone. I think a lot of men think they're alone in this experience that they're having, and they're absolutely not alone.
Welcome to Mending Piece by Piece podcast, where we talk about all things loss, grief, and emotional wellness, and where we explore deeply personal journeys of those who have experienced these issues and ways that they found to heal. And today I am really excited and honored to have Jim Rinere as a guest on the podcast. He's an entrepreneur, a C-suite executive, a professional speaker, and the author of There's Coffee in the Fridge, One Man's Journey Through Anxiety and Depression. He talks about men's mental health and emotional healing. And I was really wanted to connect and have him on to talk about just that, men's mental health and things that usually we don't talk about. I met him on TikTok and was just so excited to see somebody actually, a male, talking about men's mental health. And to me, you caught on like wildfire. I don't know how you feel, but I see comments and people are really connecting. So I appreciate you speaking out, and I'm glad you're here today to talk about that.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. As I told you when we communicated on email, the work you're doing is much needed, and I think it's incredible. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So before we kind of like really jump into the deep topic, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, family, hobbies, anything, just so we
Yeah,
get to know you a little bit.
yeah, that's great. Oh, I'm 60 years old, and I attempted suicide about 20 years ago in 2005. I've been an entrepreneur in the business world around insurance and financial markets for most of my career. And my day job, I run a healthcare startup. I'm also a high school lacrosse coach. And so I spend a lot of time coaching student athletes. And that's really where a hobby slash passion. It's something that the game has done a lot for me in my life. And so that's something I spend a lot of time giving back to. I have 3 children, all grown. My wife and have been together. We met in college. So we've been together for about 38 years now.
Oh,
And have a yeah, thanks. I have a 2.5-year-old grandchild, and so it's been an amazing journey to go through this process for me and my family. Of course, we've all gone through this together, but I get immense joy from spending time with my family. That's really where my passion lies, and that's where I spend most of my time. I do my day job so that I have options around the world about the things that I want to do financially. I wrote this book and it was published 2 years ago. And the reason I wrote the book initially was for myself. It was sort of a cathartic journal, and released it out into the world to start a conversation for men about mental health and depression and anxiety and the things that I do to manage my mental health.
wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Would you say you were, I don't want to say thrown into it, but like it sounds like it was like a long process for you. Was it something you were writing all along, or was it something you were just like, I'm going to sit down and write about this?
Hmm. When I attempted suicide, I wound up in an acute care mental health facility. And one of the first things that I was introduced to, like 3 or 4 days in, was journaling. And I've always been a writer. I've always loved to write. Having the ability to actually sit down and write something deeply emotional and meaningful just sort of flowed through me. And so I started writing journals, and I had written pretty much every day for years. And I was asked to share my story if I would be interested in sharing my story to a group of people in Connecticut where I live. There were about 100 people in the room, and I stood up and I essentially told the first 2 chapters of my book to these people. And the response was shocking and a little scary. It was probably about 5 years after I'd gotten out of the hospital. So I had lived a lot of the evolution, but I really didn't feel comfortable being sort of the poster child for this, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but the reaction was so positive. I thought, there may be something here at some point. And so fast forward now another, I don't know, 7 or 8 years pre-COVID, and I realized that the business world and the things that I do outside of coaching lacrosse doesn't really interest me. It doesn't spark my passion, but writing and telling the story does. And so I decided right before COVID that I was going to finish the book, make it a formal, retail, interesting communication, and put it out in the world. And that's essentially what I did. And like you said, it went viral on TikTok. It was a bestseller on Amazon in multiple categories, and it's now given me the opportunity and the incentive to go out and expand the message and talk more freely about it. So that's what I do.
That's awesome. So the first time I just jotted it down. Did you say the first time you spoke about it was 10 years after you were hospitalized?
A little less, probably about 5 years after I was hospitalized. Yeah.
How did you feel when someone asked you that at first?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
out or were you like, "Okay."
No, it was a little bit. I had a lot of trepidation going in because I hadn't stood up in front of anyone and talked about it. It wasn't something that I hid. In fact, my wife and I made a conscious choice very early on in this process, right after I got out of the hospital, that we would not hide the fact that I had gone through this breakdown, that it was part of who I was and it was part of our story. And so we had decided we were going to share it. So I was out in the open with it, but standing up in front of a room of people, um, 100 people, and telling the story, I was terrified. I had a lot of trepidation, but once it started to flow, it really was very natural, and it felt like, and I could tell connecting with other people in the room that it was resonating, and people were like, "Wow, if this guy can talk about it, I can talk about it." And so that was the start of it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, and I I appreciate you sharing your story. It takes a lot of I it does take a lot of courage to just start a conversation and just to tell one person, and I appreciate how you and your wife and your family handled it of like, "This is we're all going through this and we're not hiding it." And I try to tell people that a lot, like, secrets have a way of coming out, and the best way to educate people is by sharing and letting people know, especially too, how they can help. But
Yeah.
for men, and particularly, it's important to talk about it, which kinda I'm gonna have you rewind, like, way back. When did you first start noticing any of this? Is this something that you would say, looking back now, you noticed was an anxious kid or
Yeah. So there's a chapter in my book called the first essentially I talk about the first time I felt profoundly sad, that I can remember feeling
Mhm.
profoundly sad and suicidal, and I was 12. So this is something that has been with me since I was 11-ish, now that I've gone back and really reviewed things that have happened in my life. But it really started to affect me where I've had depressive episodes starting at the age of 12, and then they would come and go, and depression is something that is very painful, and it's long term, long term sadness, as you know. So it would come for 6 months, and then it would go away, and maybe not come back for a while, and maybe it would come for a month. But it was always something that was sort of there, and it never really left, and it never does leave. Right? It I could easily spin into a depressive spiral if I didn't take care of myself, and so I'm very conscious of that now, and that's something that I talk a lot about. But yeah, 12 years old.
okay. And it's just a part, like, I don't know if you're familiar, like, in therapy or anything, you've ever heard of parts. We
Oh
all
yeah.
have various parts, and I think of the movie Inside Out. Your sadness part, that's just part of who you are, and you're talking about, well, you learned how to manage it, and I don't think a lot of people understand when it comes to emotions. One, we all have them, which
Mm,
that is definitely something I wanna talk to you about with men and their view on that, but also that it's okay, there's no bad emotions or bad, like,
mm.
you shouldn't be ashamed of that, and I'm curious, as a male growing up, what were you taught about emotions in general, and then specifically depression or anxiety?
Yeah. So I grew up in a broken home, not too unlike a lot of people in the 60s and 70s. We didn't talk about emotions. I was the youngest of four children. The goal was for kids to not make noise, not be disruptive in any way. And looking back on it and learning about the situation, my father was very psychologically abusive. He was narcissistic, depressed, alcohol, all kinds of problems. And my mom was just trying to keep things moving along. She was also suffering from depression, but that is not something that anybody ever talked about. I can remember my mom being in bed for a couple of weeks at a time, and they would just say she threw out her back. So those were the things that happened, right? And so you never talked about it. The other thing is that I was an athlete. I was an NCAA All American lacrosse player in college. And so I moved in a world that was very misogynistic and very macho and strong. And you performed on the field, right? You gutted it out. You lived with pain. You didn't talk about any sort of weaknesses. And so that just made it worse, right? For me, as a kid, I was a really good athlete. And so I got a lot of accolades from men in my world, but it was very surface level, and it was only when I was on the field or on a court. And so as a kid, that was very confusing for someone that was suffering so much. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't have the language for it. And the fact that my parents were dealing with their own stuff left me sort of alone, me and my sisters alone to kind of deal with those things on our own. And so, it was not a productive or nutritive situation at all.
So you grew up like children don't speak. What's that saying they have? They shouldn't be seen or heard, kinda?
Yeah.
And definitely with the macho,
Mm.
suck it up, boys don't cry mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I talk a lot about this in the work that I do, because a lot of people identify with that sort of athletic mentality, right? Especially men. And I now, as a coach, right, as an athletic coach, bring this sort of mental health focused work, meditation, and some of the things that I do into those relationships with these young athletes. And you can see they soak it up, right? They still want to compete. They still want to be aggressive and all of the things that make you good at what you do. But at the same time, the other side of their world, right? The other parts of their world need a little hand holding. And so understanding that makes my leadership much more effective.
Yeah, I agree, and I can remember when I first coached track. I haven't coached in a couple of years, but I remember probably, maybe, close to 13, maybe 15 years ago. I remember when at a practice and I had them all sit around, we were doing meditation, guided imagery, and teaching them breathing, and I just remember the other coaches, male,
Right.
being like, "Why are you wasting your time on this?" It was just a whole thing and, the back and the forth, but the kids they just wanted that. It felt like for them, it was like the one time that people were like, "It's not about performing, it's about just, how are you? Let's just
Yeah.
sit, let's just breathe," and that's great that you can bring that in, and you're kind of breaking stereotypes that are still out there of, how how athletes and men should be, and I just think for athletes especially,
Yeah.
it's just about their performance, and yeah, if they don't do well, then what?
Yeah, and the other thing is the other reason why it was so destructive for me, because I had also been sexually abused, and so I had this fear, this innate fear of men. I just did, and you would have these guys, these big people with loud voices yelling at you, right? And they're trying to be constructive, and it's part of the teaching of the game, but that just drove so much fear into my body and so much negative energy. Now I was able to break through it because I was a good athlete, but if I wasn't a good athlete, it probably would have cratered me, and I probably would have done something about it a lot earlier.
Oh, definitely, because
Yeah,
as you've learned going through this, your whole nervous system, just like hearing a deep voice or just seeing something, your nervous system was constantly on guard and being set off, and you didn't I'm guessing you didn't talk about it, didn't have therapy then, but the release that you did get was through your sports, through lacrosse.
yeah,
So, if you didn't have that, you're right. Imagine what that would be like. I grew up, I was in sports too. I was a runner. I also played softball, but I think about that too, like, gosh, if I didn't do that, I don't even know if I'd be here, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
one of those things, like, they really have helped us. So, growing up like that, how did those beliefs shape the way you handled in the past your mental health?
Yeah.
'Cause different now.
Yeah. So the reason why I did so well initially in life was because of my athletic abilities, and I got a scholarship to go to college, and I probably wouldn't have gone to college without that.
Mm,
And so I put all of my energy into that. Like that's what I did. I did go to school and I did okay. I like to learn. I've been a lifelong learner, but my focus was playing lacrosse. That's what I wanted to do, and that's why I went to college. And I didn't care about anything else. So I put all of that energy into it. When I got out of school, I put all of my energy into making money because I grew up fairly poor, and we had everything we needed. We always had food, but I grew up in an 800 square foot house on Long Island. We were the people that didn't have a much. We had clean clothes and food, but my focus was money. So I went from focusing on athletic ability to focusing on earning money, and those are two very empty experiences at the end of the day, right? So it was sort of a recipe for the fact that this thing was going to explode at some point. I was fortunate to have a close emotional connection and loving relationship with my college girlfriend, who is now my wife. Without that, I absolutely would have suicided for sure right after college because you leave the playing field and then you're in the workforce and now you're putting on this costume to go to work every day and you're not who you are, right? But you also don't understand that you're putting yourself in a situation that is not you and that is just completely unhealthy, but you don't know it, right? I didn't know what I didn't know. But my behavior shifted pretty dramatically. I drank a lot of alcohol late
mm,
nights, putting myself in very dangerous situations, to try to punish myself and stop the pain.
okay. So was that after college you
Yeah,
did that?
yeah,
Okay. And so what I hear you saying too is that you learn to get those emotions, crumple them in a ball, stuff them all the way down as far as you can into your belly,
yeah,
forget about it, and focus on sports, then work, like whatever it was, just to
yeah.
keep it and keep it away.
Yeah, and to achieve the American dream,
Yeah,
like I talk about in my speaking work, I talk about May 5th of 2005, and that was the day that I decided that I was going to take my own life. And I say I have achieved the American dream, right? May 5th, 2005, I achieved the American dream. I have accomplished more in my life than most people could ever even dream of, and I was miserable. And so, you know, uh, this is this is why I do what I do because a lot of people are walking around feeling very detached and disconnected from joy and peace. And there's a way to get there, but recognizing the fact that you're not there is the first step.
yeah. So I wrote this something down. Two things that popped up when you said that, like what I share with a lot of people is like there's a ladder. And I hear a lot of people in counseling, it's like, well, as soon as I get that promotion, then I'm going to take that vacation or I'm going to settle down. But then they get the promotion. Well, as soon as I can get that car, soon as this, and there's always another rung to the ladder.
Yep.
And what people are missing is exactly what you said is that they're just things. They're not satisfying that void. It's not about money and all these achievements. It's really about what is it in here that you need and what makes you feel good. And it's not what we're taught. It's not that we appreciate what you said in the very beginning. Is I just enjoy being with my family.
Yeah.
Were you taught that? No,
Mm-mm.
no.
Nope.
Go work. Go do this. We're not taught that stuff. So yeah, like you experience like many people, and I think more so men than I mean females do too. But if you're doing all that, you still don't feel good. Well, what's wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like
No,
I'm doing everything they said. Well, who's they? Like
exactly.
rewrite that.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so the two things that I focus on, one is self connection, and you cannot connect with your world if you're not connected to yourself.
Oh, I
And the
like that.
second is, life's magic is in the smallest of moments. It's not in the big things that we think we should chase, right? It's great to have goals and achievements and go after things, but it's these small little interactions in our day that is where the magic lies. And so that's what I focus on. I focus on self connection and these small moments, and then everything else kind of falls into place the way it should.
Yeah. On in my, world here, therapy world, we call them glimmers.
Mm, I like that. Yeah.
Look at for the glimmers, right? Because that's it. People are looking for that big thing. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's so important, that connection, and then, those small moments, because that's what really does matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So my book is called There's Coffee in the Fridge, and that has become a metaphor for these small magical moments. And the reason why it's called Coffee in the Fridge is after my breakdown and my breakthrough and my evolution, I had chosen to go back to work. And now I sold my business. It's 3 years after my hospitalization. I got a job in the wellness space and I was going on my first business trip. And it was the first trip I'd taken in 3 years. And so I was fairly anxious, as you can imagine. And I said to my wife, I'm catching an early flight. I put some coffee in the fridge and I'm going to grab it and I'm going to go to the airport. My wife's a night owl. She never gets out of bed before 7, right? The alarm goes off at 4. I get up out of the bed and I tiptoe around to give her a kiss on the cheek. She turns her head wide awake and says, "There's coffee in the fridge." And, in that microsecond, right? In that small moment, she said to me, basically, without saying it, "I love you. I see you. You're going to be fine." And that's why this
Wow.
metaphor of "there's coffee in the fridge" has become this thing. And that's what we use in my family all the time. Like, my granddaughter gave me a hug the other day and said, "I love you." And my wife said, "That's a coffee in the fridge moment." And that's exactly what it's all about, right? It's that small interaction.
Wow. I like that. That's really cool. And you really felt that as soon as she said that?
Yeah. Yeah. I knew it was like boom, it was like a hug to the heart.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm sure people ask you that, like, "What? There's coffee in the
Yeah.
fridge?" But everybody can connect to that. That makes so much sense and helps people. So I'm not sure, you can say no, but I was curious if we could talk a little bit about May 5th.
Sure.
What was going on then? What led you? And because I think this is important, is that like those feelings and what was going on and the mindset that got you there and what was going on in those moments. And
Yeah.
then what was next? What happened?
Yeah. So pretty straightforward. We talked about how I bottled up my feelings and really didn't spend any time talking about depression for sure.
Mhm.
My wife and I were obviously very close and we had a long-term relationship. At the same time, I was masking my deepest fear, which was that I was at some point going to kill myself. I from the age of 12 until, I had ended up in the hospital, I always thought I would not live till I was 45.
Right.
And the reason is because I was going to die by suicide. I was not going to get sick. That was my plan, that I would never get past 45. And the reason is because my depression was so painful. It created so much noise in my head and so much fear and anxiety. And so I just wanted it to end. So on May 5th of 2005, I'm sitting in my office in downtown New Haven, Connecticut. I'm the CEO of a company that I started. I have an amazing wife, 3 amazing children, a big house, new cars. We go on vacation all over the place. And I'm miserable. I'm just unhappy. And ultimately, I said to myself, if this is what it's going to be, I do not want this. I can't do this anymore. And the feeling I had was sort of like living underwater. That's what it felt like, that I couldn't really hear clearly. I couldn't see clearly. I couldn't move around freely. I felt constrained. And I felt like the only way this is going to end is if I end it. And so the other thing is, I firmly believed that everyone around me, especially my wife and my children, would be better off without me here. I did not want to impact them in any way. So I think a lot of people say that when people die by suicide, it's one of the most selfish things that can happen. And I agree, it is selfish. However, my mindset was this is a gift. I'm giving you the gift of removing me from your world. As twisted as that sounds, that is what I felt. And so I went home that night, had a conversation with my wife, and I talked about my detachment and my lack of understanding of what happiness really is. And this anger was welling up inside of me that I could not really explain what happiness is or what joy is, and I ultimately didn't feel it for any sustained period of time. Um, and I hadn't really thought at that point that this is what I was going to do, but on May 6th, I'm sitting in my office in my building, looking out the window on the fifth floor, and people are in the office running around. They're making coffee. It's a Friday. It's a beautiful out. They're making plans for the weekend. I have the door closed, and I'm looking out the window, just trying desperately not to jump. And I spent probably 3.5 hours staring out that window, not doing anything else, just sitting there. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. And I got in the car and I started driving north on Interstate 95. And I was going 110 miles an hour, sobbing uncontrollably because I was looking for a rock to drive my car into.
Yep.
And this is where the story gets, and some of the blanks have been filled in by others, but I decided to call my wife to say goodbye. And I picked up the phone and I called her, and I know she's not going to answer the phone. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Kids are going to be descending on the house. She's, got a lot going on, and I'll just leave the message and that'll be that. Well, she answered the phone. So now I'm on the phone saying goodbye. And at the same time, the house phone rings when we had a house phone. And my sister was a dean at Princeton University, and she was very well versed in mental health issues and suicidality. And my wife is on one phone with me with the mobile phone and on my house phone with my sister. And they're going back and forth. And ultimately, they talk me off the road. She hadn't been to my house in 3 years, my sister. She was the exit behind me on the highway. And so they talked me off the road. She got into my car and got me out of got me out of the driver's seat and took me to Yale Psych. And ultimately, they took me somewhere else, but that's where it started.
Wow. Yeah, God was definitely there, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
those moments. So, you clearly called her and said goodbye, like, she knew what you meant. It
Oh, yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Mm.
Wow.
Crazy scene. I think about that, picture that scene, and sometimes it's hard to talk about, but, here she is on the phone with her husband who's telling her he's going to kill himself. Not that I want to, that I am. And she's got my kids running around the kitchen, right? And thankfully, my sister was there and called, and the fact that she was right behind me on the highway is probably the reason why I gave up and succumbed to help.
Yeah. And what I heard you saying is what I think 90, I don't have a great statistic because I'll be honest, I don't think they really know, but probably like 95% of the people who die by suicide are thinking it's about the pain.
Yes.
They just, and that's you just wanted the pain to end, and you couldn't see all the glimmers. You couldn't see all the things that were right in front of you because going back, because of your trauma, your unresolved trauma and depression that could have been too, as well as like genetic and not talking about it. And then your nervous system's carrying this, carrying. Of course, no one's talking about any of this. So you have no idea. And you're just like, I'm messed up. And you just wanted the pain to stop. And you said the sadness, the depression, but I also heard you say the noise in my head and the fear and anxiety. Now, because this is something that I see on this end a lot. Would you say there was one bigger than the other, or like anxiety, or they are both just kind of both there together?
I think it was anxiety was the biggest issue that was causing so much disruption in my thought process. The
Yep.
other thing was admitting weakness was a huge fear that I didn't want the stigma of having a mental health issue, right? And I didn't want people to know that I was weak. And that was something that I had to break through and learn a lot about. It's not weak to admit that you need help, right? To admit vulnerability. And I
Mhm.
do talk about that quite a bit. I think men, especially, are terrified to say, "I need help. I can't do this," and that's okay, right? It's okay to admit that it takes a lot more courage to admit that you need help than it does to just suck it up and move forward.
Oh, definitely. So The thing that you said about, like, people saying it's selfish, and
Mm,
that's why I wanted to really emphasize the point about the pain, and that is definitely what I've heard a lot from people who have survived, as well as people that are left behind. Like, that's what they may have heard in the note, or they didn't want to be a burden, that they thought that people were better off without them. And that's in those moments, that's what you're really thinking and believing. And it's like your brain, it is medical. I really do believe it's like it just kind of went like you
yeah,
just, those protections that you later started to gain, those coating around, the wire. I always say, like, electrical wire. You didn't have one at that moment. It was just bare. So
yeah,
every little thing was hitting it, and it was too much. So you said about, like, with men, like, and with yourself, the fear, you didn't want to admit that. You didn't want to be weak. But before I go there, why I asked the question about anxiety and depression, I forgot, was because a majority of the people that I talk to, and in the 30 some years I've been doing this, anxiety seems to be prevalent, like,
mm,
big time.
yeah,
But we talk about depression all the time.
yeah,
We don't talk about the anxiety. So I know when I do the trainings, that's the one thing I say, like, because people look for depression, but they're not thinking about the anxiety or those thoughts that you have in your head and how you can't quiet them.
yeah. It's a great point because for me, what leads to my depression is my anxiety. If I don't manage my anxiety,
Huh?
I will suffer from depression. It's that simple,
Yep, it's
Yeah.
like a seesaw, you
Yes.
know? So, I'm curious, like, because 'cause we're talking about the belief systems that you had, and that I think growing up in your generation had, and I think we may still have. What are some of those myths that you would like to debunk about men? I don't even say mental health, but emotional well-being.
Yeah, I think the first one, really, what we already talked about it, is that it's okay to be vulnerable. I think the second one is that you're not alone. I think a lot of men think they're alone in this experience that they're having, and they're absolutely not alone. Every single guy, and I'm not kidding, every single guy that I have shared this experience with has immediately turned to me and said, "You know what? I've felt this," or "I know somebody, my uncle, my father, my brother." Everybody experiences some level of discomfort and fear and anxiety. And they don't, sometimes they don't want to admit it, but every single person I've talked to has met me with complete care and connection. It's amazing. The
Yeah.
other thing that the other myth is that I'm going to have to live with this forever. And that's how I felt. And it's not the case. 80 to 90% of people that seek treatment learn how to manage it very effectively and can live in peace and joy. And so I think that, those are the three things that really jump out at me. And, you know, the other thing is that people are afraid that they think it will affect their career. It will be a negative stain on their career. And I work in circles in the business world where showing some level of weakness could be seen as some level of vulnerability could be seen as a weakness, but I've completely turned that around. It's a leadership trait now because I can connect with people in a way that others can't. And so that's sort of my superpower. And
Yeah.
that's how I look at it.
Yeah. That I love those. I like that you had said about the career, because that is true. It's like we're supposed to have a mask on and then, like, be this whole other person and check your emotions at the door kind
Yes.
of thing.
Yes.
And I doubt you saw it, but I just did a quick video yesterday about very similar. It was only like 2 minutes after I saw the baseball player that was crying.
Mm,
Did you see the baseball?
yes.
Like,
Yes.
I just this stuff just honestly, it makes me emotional, and I was very teary, and I'm like, "All right, I got it. I have to say something." I just feel like I always gotta
I
say
love that.
something.
Yeah.
That's just not, like, we're human. These athletes are human. What makes people think that they're not, which this is something else I had out a couple weeks ago, and back and forth with somebody about this in the comments. They really believe that men don't have emotions, and it's obviously a man telling me this, and was like, "Ma'am, you're wrong. We don't, like,
Yeah.
you just need to get it." And I forgot what the comment was. Basically, stop nagging us. And I agree. Women can be nagging, and women, that's what I try to talk about, is like, we need to understand it better. and understand that we're carrying and we're keeping those stereotypes going, like, by, like, "Oh, just suck it up, don't,"
Yeah.
you know, because they're fear. So, like, what do you say to that? Like, about emotions in
Yeah.
general?
I think creating the opportunity for the conversation is what needs to happen. Right. And for me as a man, that starts with listening. I need somebody to just listen. I don't need you to respond. I'm not asking you to solve my problem. I just want you to listen to me. And teaching people how to listen is a really critical skill that most people don't know. They don't understand. And so, if and the other thing is, like, I could share with you, like, I twisted my ankle, right? And you could say, "Oh man, I twisted my ankle 10 times worse than that. Let me tell you this story." And it's like, I'm not telling you this to compare. Like, I'm just sharing with you what's happening in my life, right? We have this tendency to automatically go to this sort of comparative thing with people where, yeah, no, I did this. And you're trying to be empathetic, but at the same time, what you're doing is shutting it down. It's like, oh, okay, your pain is worse than mine. Um, but I think listening, I think giving a man an opportunity to listen is really important. My wife and I have this thing where she's like, "You're nuts. You're all over the place. You're talking about this. You're talking about that." She's like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "Well, obviously, I wrote a book about it. I'm nuts, but I just want to speak it. It doesn't mean anything, right? I just want to get it out of my body, and it
Yeah,
doesn't need to be responded to, right?" And so the thing that we use is there more? Like, what are you feeling in this moment? And you explain it, and then is there more? And the more might be, what do you think? Could you help me understand that a little bit? Or the more might be, no, there isn't any more. I'm good. Thank you for letting me share. And I think that men don't get an opportunity to do that. And it's not because it's women, it's just in general. You don't get an opportunity to share where you're not looking for a response. You don't want to be judged. You just want to put the information out there because you've got to get it out of your body.
I agree. I agree. And in, like, my experience personally, but also professionally, is that men in general, let's say, like, your wife is sharing, right? And she's talking about something in general, you are wired to
Yep.
let me fix it.
Mm.
I need to provide, take care of that. Got it.
Yep.
So teaching listening skills
Yes.
men is so important because you're wired that way,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
But it also goes on the other end is that, yeah, we're used to being more emotional, more verbal. We need to learn how to listen too and hear these things because we're not taught that. We're not told that that's normal. So I like what you and your family have. Is there more? Because that's something my husband and I do. And I have to say, in the beginning, probably years ago, of course, that's something I learned in the field, but it was kind of a little foreign. But it's helped so much when it's like I could come home and I'll be like, okay, I just need to vent right now.
Sure.
And he knows, I think half the time, honestly, he sits in his recliner, does not will make a comment. Like, he looks like he's there. I think he's just learned it so well that, and that's what I'll say. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
So, he might say, is there more? I'll be like, oh, that seems upsetting. He validates. And once in a while, because our rule was you can ask, would you like feedback? But it was my part to on his part, like, "Hey, I wanna run this by you, I need your feedback," or, "I need to run this by you," or, "I need to say this, and I just need you to listen," and, like, really learning how to own your stuff and ask for it,
Sure.
and it really does help when you can do that, and even for me, because 'cause I'm one too that my mind's, like, probably like yours all over the place, so I'll be like, "Done?"
I
Like,
love that. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's just like, no, he'll tell me, and I know, all right, like, try to quiet out everything because I always say, like, when a man starts to, like, really talk, you better listen because it's usually really important and you don't
Yeah.
have a lot of space. We don't leave it for you.
Well, I also think that, and as a therapist, you'll appreciate this. The process of therapy is not linear, right? And it takes a very circuitous path. And some days you're 5 steps forward, and some days you're 10 steps back. But once you've released and gone deeper, right? You've gone down the layers, you can start to explore the masculine and the feminine and really get into what the feminine really is, right? I was as masculine as could be. I could go on a field and be the most aggressive, angry person, competitive person on the planet. I mean, I love to win and I love to compete. I worked as a high level athlete for years. I never explored the feminine side of my emotions ever, and was never given the opportunity to do that. And when I did, I started to realize, oh, this is pretty amazing. This is an amazing thing. And then the next step was starting to recognize the masculine in my wife. She has a very masculine side of her communication style. And so that would butt up against my masculine like all the time, right? But then we started to learn this sort of yin and yang of what that is and how to marry that together. But again, like this can take a very long time, and it takes a lot of work and conscious effort to really be connected and understand what those pieces are.
Yeah. And I think one of the first things is really understanding emotions in general, because
Mm.
I have people coming in here all ages and they don't have an emotional vocabulary. We all know happy, sad, and mad, maybe, and maybe angry. Like after that, like a lot of people don't have it. So how are they going to know how to express it? And then how do they know if they're not really connected to their body, like when they're feeling a certain way, to recognize that's anxiety or that's worry, or like when I anxiety, worry, nervousness, those three, people be like, you just said that. I'm like, they're three different emotions.
Yeah.
They feel very differently physically. And usually when you start to pay attention, you notice it. But I think for, like you said, for yourself, just learning that and having somebody with you going through that process sounds like it was very, not just therapeutic, but just like having that support and just knowing like they have your back. Like your wife is there no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter
Uh,
what you're going to bring to the table, she's ready to hold it and be
Yeah.
there with you.
Yeah. No, you hit the nail on the head. And that did not mean that we knew that we would be together. We just knew that we had this connection and we were going to help each other no matter what that looked like in the end.
Mhm.
Um, but the interesting thing that happened about 2 or 3 years into my therapeutic process is I was always the identified patient, right? I was always the problem. And my wife was trying to
Wait,
keep
hold on. Did you see yourself that way?
I 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Because I knew that I had this anxious fear and I had this darkness inside of me that I didn't share. So I knew that I was the problem, even though I was living this sort of dishonest existence. When I started to become healthy, right? When I was moving down the path to being healthy, my wife was allowed and given the opportunity for herself to let go. She didn't have to manage things. She didn't have to be worried about whether I was going to do something that was going to be unsafe or that it would be there would be turmoil, I guess is the best way to put it. And so it allowed her then to get into her therapeutic process and to work on the things that she needed to work on. And so we got a chance, to your point, to do this together over a period of time. And that's when the magic for our relationship really happened. I think that it's really important to understand, and I know you know this, but I'm an individual, she's an individual, right? And then we're a couple. We're also parents. So these four dynamics are happening, but each thing has to be honored individually. And that we got the opportunity to do that because we worked with a professional that held our hands for 10 years.
Yeah, they're great points. And I was thinking too of a puzzle. That's why I asked you, like, did you see yourself that way? Because families will do that. Well, they're the ones, they have the problem.
Yeah.
Like, guess what? You start working on your stuff. You're just a piece to it.
Mm.
And like everybody else has some parts. Not saying that that caused you anxiety. It's just like, what part are they playing? And, how have they been impacted? So everybody got to work
Yeah. Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
it fit well,
Yeah.
because if you're changing, that changes the dynamics, right?
Yeah. 100%. The other thing
Yeah.
that blew my mind was the the energy that my wife brought to the relationship, the interaction with me reminded me of my father. And
Oh,
I was terrified of my father. And so this perpetual pain would happen. And I never understood it. I never got that, right? I learned it afterward. And it was so helpful to take that apart. And so that's why in my book, I go back in time. I take people on that journey from
mhm.
this 6-year-old kid forward. And the reason for that is not to point blame. It's just to understand where that energy is coming from and why you're reacting in the way that you are.
Yeah. It's a trauma response. And
Yeah.
a lot of that's what I explain to people is like our past is our present. So Meaning, when there's a lot of things that are unresolved, you're not consciously
Yeah.
thinking like, "Oh, reminds me of my dad." It's just little things, and you revert back to that 6-year-old. So the reaction, the part that shows up is the 6-year-old part,
Yeah.
and that reaction that you're getting is from that because it has not been healed. Your nervous system and your has not been healed. So people don't always understand that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to break. It's so much like you learned. There's just so much. There's layers and layers and layers, and it's not as simple as snap out of it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Snap out of it. Suck
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah.
Look
Just
at everything that's going on. It's great, isn't it?
like
Like,
great. Yeah.
oh, really? Yeah,
Oh, thanks. Didn't think about that.
yeah. If you did, you wouldn't be feeling this way. I mean, it's,
Like,
so I mean, this is kind of redundant, but I'm wondering what prevents men and boys from getting help. Do you think it is the weakness?
yeah,
Uh, okay.
I do. I think it's the stigma of the weakness. I really do. And I think being labeled or, you know, having somebody tell you this is what is wrong with you is devastating for a guy. For a man to admit that failure is devastating. It's like the whole thing about, asking for directions when you're driving, right? It's like, I have failed. I can't do this. That's a simple example, but it's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah. It drives me crazy. Just freaking stop paying somebody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The thing that I talk about a lot with leadership and in business is, look, if you were going to learn how to play tennis, you might hire a tennis coach. If you have an accountant to do your taxes, you have a lawyer to do your contracts. Why not have a coach or a therapist to take you through your mental and emotional journey? I mean, you can't do it alone.
Nah. And I think what your message is and what you're going out there doing is starting this conversation. And I adding to that, I guess, is what I try to say to people is these emotions that you're talking about, we all have them.
Mm,
We all experience emotions, and there's 7 that we're just genetically born with, and I can't even remember what they are. But the difference is, one, how we think about it, genetically what's going on, what our experiences have been, and how we react to them. So that's the difference is what you see on that outside part, but it's not that you didn't have it. But I think that's where a lot of the breakdown comes to, and it's so basic is like happy. I'll ask people, is angry, is that a good emotion or a bad emotion?
mm.
What answer do you think I get most of the time?
It's a bad emotion, but
Bad
it
emotion.
depends on the situation.
Neither. It's an emotion,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
It's an emotion.
Yes.
Same with sadness, same with anxiety. And we all have it and they serve purposes. Like anxiety serves a purpose. But what happens is if you had trauma, if it gets stuck genetically, there's stuff going on chemically with your body and your brain, is that it doesn't know that it needs to kind of switch gears and you're safe.
Yeah.
So like there's so many layers, but the bottom line is the basic is we all have emotions and they are okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that, if people could just get that, like boys, girls, guess what? You all have emotions and they're all okay.
Yep.
They're the same, happy, sad, how you might experience it and then like respond to it may be different.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. And that's life, you know.
Yeah.
It,
Did you see, hold on, did you see the movie? This is just me. Just connect weird things. Did you see the movie Kindergarten Cop?
long time ago. Yeah.
Do you remember he was kindergarten and the kid stands up and he goes, boys have penises and girls have vaginas. Do you remember? That's what I almost thought about when I was saying that is like, hey, we need to teach it. Boys, girls, we all have emotions. We all being sad. Like that just, I'm sorry. That's how my works. That's what
my brain works the same way. I love it. It's great.
So sorry. What were you getting ready to say?
I don't remember.
Sorry, I totally threw you off with that one.
Okay. I was just thinking about Schwarzenegger because that movie's funny. That movie's very funny. Yeah.
It is funny. It is. But yeah, so I mean, weakness. So that's definitely a big thing. And like
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say is that you're telling people it's not a sign of weakness to get help or to say that I have these feelings. Not at
Right.
all.
Right. Yeah. And it's not a forever thing, right?
Yeah.
one of the things that they did when I was in the hospital was put me on medication, and I did not want to be on medication because I didn't want to take medication for the rest of my life, and I didn't want the side effects and whatever. And I took medication for 8 years. It saved my life. It allowed me to do the work that I needed to do, and I'm no longer on medication. But it was a great thing. And with the new medications that are out there, there's really nothing wrong with it. Right? People take medication for cholesterol issues and heart blood pressure issues and all kinds of stuff. It's
Yep.
the same thing. So,
Yeah. And medication, like you said, it could serve its purpose just for this time period,
yeah,
and then you eventually can get off it. And that's the thing. We also have to look at it like not just as like it's a strength or, like just push through it. It's physiological. It's
yeah,
a medical condition.
yes,
The chemicals in your brain, and actually we see now like 90% of like serotonin and some other of those feel good chemicals are actually in your gut.
yeah,
So like your body is not processing it the way it needs to. And it could be you're just born that way. It could be a teacher yelled at you or a car accident or another kind of trauma that shifted it. And so you take medicine for a little bit, get
yeah,
it back in, learn the tools that you need. Don't wait. Like a lot of people take medicine, like, I feel great now, I'm done, and not work. That's
yeah.
not going to help.
No,
But
no.
yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you're off medicine. That's
I am
good to hear. Tell us about like the turning point for you and the healing. Cause how long were you hospitalized?
about a month.
A month. Wow. And that I have to say, for how many years ago was that?
It was 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Like, that's unheard of now.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard to get, like, really good care. So, like, honestly, that was really good that you were able to be there and get that kind of care, um, that you
Yeah,
needed.
I mentioned my sister drove me to Yale Psych. My wife came down, and it was a Friday afternoon, and at the time, Yale Psych on a Friday was not a great place to be. I mean, I have no memory of this at all, but they told me there were people on the floor and in the hallway and banging their heads against the wall, and my wife's like, "I can't leave him here," and they made her sign a waiver to take me out of there, and they pumped me full of sleeping pills and some other stuff, and, basically, I was in bed for 3 days until they found a facility to put me in, and I went to Silver Hill, which is in Connecticut, really amazing, world-renowned facility. And I was in an acute care unit with 24 people for 3.5 weeks. But the thing that was important about the outpatient experience was that they made sure that I had the support I needed. I had group therapy, I had individual therapy until I found another therapist. But you didn't just get put out into the world. And I know that it's really hard for people to find mental health help. It's a lot of practitioners don't take new patients. Some don't take insurance, and I know it's a very difficult thing. But I urge people to try and find somebody. And if they don't like the person that they're talking to, they should go find somebody else because there's not everyone doesn't fit for everybody. But having a coach, which is what I call it, to me is critical. And so I wanted to learn. I had given up, and
Mm.
the turning point for me was I wanted to find happiness. I wanted to achieve peace. And so I started to work on my mental health the way that I worked as an athlete. That's what I knew. And I read every single book I could get my hands on. I went to
Wow.
therapy twice a week for years and was completely focused on that one thing, obviously with building the relationships with my family and myself. But um, that was all part of the process. But for me, I felt like I had this clean slate where I could now rebuild, and that's what I did.
And you put in the work. I mean, that's the thing with therapy. It's not like I tell people, my magic wand broke a long time ago. So if that's what you're looking for,
Yeah,
you'll be very disappointed kind of thing. So it's a lot of work. And just like you did other things, you just dove into it and you're like, all right, I'm doing this.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
really is the competitive aspect of my personality. It's like it's not that I wanna be the best, but I wanna understand this. I really want to learn, and I love to learn. So if you put any sort of a topic in front of me, I'm gonna try to figure out what it's all about, what the derivation of it is, where it comes from. That's just the way I'm wired, and so I put the work in, but the main driver for me was the opposite of what I believed on May 5th, which was everybody would be better off without me. I wanted my family's legacy to be that we all learned this thing together. And we came out on the other side of this and broke the cycle that generations of my family had created. And so,
Yeah.
no, I know that this was genetic. I know that it was unavoidable. My parents did the best they could with what they had, and they were both abused as children. And so I learned all of this, and I was like, okay, I'm done. This family unit is breaking this cycle right now.
Yeah. Yeah. You're breaking those generational curses and yeah. Wow. And I really hear you and appreciate how, like, with your family, like, you didn't hide it. Going back to what you said in the very beginning, like, you were like, all right, I see it, I'm learning it, and we're going to talk about it. We're all going to, so that your children now see that and their children will. And that's how you break it,
Yeah.
not in silence,
Nope.
not
Yeah.
in silence. So, and you were like, okay, let's figure this out.
Yep.
So, and through that, it sounds like one of the things through your process in your healing was self-discovery, was self-awareness and self-discovery,
Yeah.
which was what you were trying to hide pretty much however many years before that happened.
Yep. Exactly. And I believe that self connection is the secret. I really do.
Yeah.
And the way to get to that for me is journaling, meditation. I have a list of 10 things on my roadmap to health that are regular practices that I do that keep me grounded and choosing the life that I want to live. Really understanding who I am, why I am, so I can make choices about the things that I want to do and where I want to go and how I want to be. It's really
Yeah.
that simple.
And I think that's important for, like, not everybody's going to journal. Remember, even myself, I tell people journal. It's hard for me. And I remember when I was in therapy, they'd be like, go journal. I'd be like, uh-huh. How am I supposed to be writing? Like,
Yeah.
it, hence why I did the books I did. They're guided journal prompts because I'm like, it's like I draw a blank. But that self connection and that self discovery is so important because all those parts that we talked about, there are no bad parts. They're
Yeah.
part of you, and you need to learn to love them. And we got to bring them all to the table, and they all got to learn how to get along and where they all fit in. And when one's not happy, well, what do we need to do? That's those tools that you're talking about,
Yeah.
and recognizing that's what's going on. It's not that you're this awful bad person; it's you feel awful
Yeah.
because something's not feeling right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly right.
Yeah. So, what I know you said you have 10, you don't have to go over, but on the hardest days, like, especially, like, for you now, because every day is a challenge, right?
Yes. It is.
And I like how you said it's, like, lifelong. Doesn't mean, like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm done now, I don't have to deal with that." Yeah.
Yeah. So
What do you do?
uh, I meditate. When things are really bad, like if I'm feeling really, really bad, typically meditation or exercise helps a lot. Um, if I can get a little bit of an endorphin hit with some exercise, it helps me. Going outside and, sitting under a tree, looking at the sky, attaching myself to something much bigger than me helps a lot.
Mm,
Um,
oh,
so the list is meditation, journal, live real connection, have meaningful interactions with people throughout the day, exercise. I live gratitude. I write down something I'm grateful for every day. And it is a conscious decision to do that, right? To sit and say, I'm grateful for this, whatever it is. Um, I try to be present as often as possible. I live forgiveness. Forgiving myself was probably the hardest thing. Not probably, it was the hardest thing, but I've forgiven everyone that's ever harmed me, put me in danger, whatever, including myself. Um, I sleep consistently. If I if I feel really bad on a couple of days in a row, it's always sleep.
yeah,
I can go 7, 8 hours. I need 7 hours of sleep. If I don't get that, if my sleep is broken, I can see myself struggling, eating well. That's the other thing. If I'm not feeling great and I eat something bad, I know that it's going to impact me. And then the last one is I drink a lot of water. I drink a lot of water. So
hydrate, hydrate, hydrate.
yeah, yeah. So it's nothing like new or different and magical, but these are the 10 things that work for me in my practice. I strive to do them every day. I don't do them every day, but I strive to. But I do them more often than not. And when I don't do well in a given day, I can go back and look and see what was missing,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. I haven't actually I put them in the books, but a self-care coping plan kind of thing. And I have one that I give out to people and train some trainings that I do, especially when it's about self-care in the workplace. I'll give these out. And one of the things that's so important is like I'll tell people like here's a list, but go Google to get more of self-care activities. And I tell them go through the list and I want you with a highlighter, highlight all the things you used to do in one color. Then go through it, highlight the things that you're doing now, then highlight, things that, wow, that's interesting, or I always wanted to try that, or, oh, I might, whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're not really doing it, but it's like interesting. Then I have them, there's like 3 columns. It's like self-care, playful, and nurturing. And then for those that are spiritual religion, that should be in there because we need balance. And then when I have them write down, what are you doing now? It's always uneven.
Mm.
Like there may be all this stuff in one column, or there's only like 1 or 2 things in general. But what we talk about is how usually when we feel our worst is we let go of those things that we do that brings us just might not be joy, but it keeps us even.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
That's our goal.
yeah, yeah. It's a great point.
So
Yeah,
trying to add them back in and then kind of explore, well, why did you give up those things? I'm busy, I got work, I got kids, I got this, or maybe you just didn't like it anymore. So the goal is, all right, now you're going to go back and they got to figure out the difference between what nurturing, self-care, all that, I explain it, but then you're going to add at least 1 to 2 things each week in each column because
yeah,
we need balance.
yeah,
And eventually you start to feel, you notice it. You
yeah,
feel what in the beginning, especially if people are depressed.
yeah,
It's just getting up and getting dressed is hard.
yeah.
So you start slow, small steps, right?
Very small. Yep. And when I I recently did a speaking engagement to a room full of business executives, and I said, I'm here to help people connect to themselves because I want you to be a better leader, right? And I can help you be a better leader. I want you to do one thing in the next 24 hours. Pick one. And, meditate or journal. That's it. Those are the 2 options. It's really simple. And
Yeah.
if you do it one day, then do it the next day. And eventually it becomes a habit. If it doesn't work for you, try the other one, you know, because I think people get overwhelmed with the responsibility of the things that are now in front of them, right? So,
Yeah.
and you need trying to avoid overwhelming people and just making it really simple.
Yeah, because your body's already overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
you're right. That's why I say like small steps.
Yeah.
It's just even if it's like, okay, I just stopped and did 3 deep breaths. That's all you could do today. Great. You didn't do it yesterday, so we made progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
No? So I was curious, as you were beginning to heal and learn more about yourself and your relationships and all, how do I want to say this? Did you notice your relationships with other people change or shift at all? Good, bad?
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, a lot of people that were in my life were toxic because I was toxic, and you draw energy to yourself, right? So I drew a lot of toxic people into my life. Those relationships just dissipated; they disappeared, and the people that continued to be in my life were people that were positive influences on me, and I was a positive influence on them. So those relationships only got stronger. And
Fine.
deeper and more connected. And the
Yeah.
relationships that didn't. And so it was an interesting process that I consciously watched over about a 2-year period. And I remember having a conversation with my wife during a therapy session where, it was really, on the floor crying, very, very deep connection, connective work. And she said, there's got to be good men in the world. And I said, no, I don't know any good men. And it was true. That was a true statement based on where I was. Um, but now I'm just surrounded with so many good men. It's crazy, right? All this stuff just left. All this toxic behavior left. And so I've been left with relationships that are incredibly connected. My circle of very close friends is very, very small.
Yeah.
Well, and at the same time, I love being connected to people in very small ways throughout the day, but I can't suffer surface level relationships. It just doesn't work for me. Once you go there, it's impossible to come back.
Hmm. Can you say more about that? I like that. Like, I
I
get what you're saying.
I want to know, like the conversation that you and I are having, right? We just met. We were having a very deep conversation about important stuff. Those are the kinds of relationships that I want to have with people. I don't talk to me about the Giants or the Padres or whatever your sports team is. I could care less, right? I love sports, but that's not who you are. I want to know who you are. I want to know where you're from. Talk to me about your family. Tell me about the shit that's going on that you don't like. You know, those are the kinds of interactions that I want to have that are meaningful because that's what, to me, that's what fires my soul up is really making those connections.
You really are hitting on something. And I think that's what a lot of people need and are meaningful to them. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
And when you were speaking, I hope one day that my husband will share his story and speak. I'd love to have the two of you talk because like that's exactly what you said. I've heard it. Like I've heard it from him and it's so true that surface. That's why I wanted you to speak a little bit more. Not that, hey, how you doing? How about them Phillies? And then Philly, they suck. They
Yeah.
lost to that first 2 nights in a row,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So the thing I never understood, which I very much understand now, is that those interactions was how I lived my life, and it left me so empty and lonely on the
Yeah.
backside of it, and I never understood it, and it would just make me angry and fuel my depression. It fueled my anxiety, and I never understood it. And so now that I understand it, I can be in an interaction like that. It has no impact on me, but I can walk away and be like, okay, that person isn't involved. They don't get it. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
so, but some people are never going to get it, and that's okay.
And you know where you're investing your time now.
Yes.
And I think for men, this is a conversation I have with my husband a lot, is that you weren't giving the permission or understanding of that, and this is what you think you had to be. And like my husband, he always says he's the baby of 9.
Wow.
So he was always with his mom and grew up in a very pretty poor family kind of. And he was like a mama's boy, kind of like just was with her all the time because
Yeah.
everyone's off to school. So he's around his aunts, his mom, and his sister. And of course, he's definitely been more emotional. And he talks about more now, like how that was like he was made to feel to be ashamed of that. Like, again, men don't have emotions. Like, so you're trying to be something you're not. And those surface conversations, because like our kids played sports and my daughter played the competitive tournament softball, like all through till she went to college to play. And he would say it all the time. He goes, I just can't be around these people. Like, I don't want to talk about the Eagles. I don't want to talk about this. Like, I don't want to talk about what pitch that was. And he still says it to this day. He goes, I can't tell you what one pitch is. And they're like, it's a knuckleball or whatever. It makes me laugh because I drag him to all these Phillies games and he's just like, okay. But he had cardiac arrest. He literally died. And praise God, they saved his life. And he had to go through 2 surgeries. But the conversations around what happened or, like, people even just, like, ignoring it,
Yeah.
there's a couple people that we talk to all the time that after that didn't talk to. Like, that's to me, like, I was getting it, but that was very, like, eye-opening again for him, and it's hurtful
It is.
because someone can't just say, "How are you feeling?" Like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can't have feelings, guys, you can't have them.
Nope. And they don't know what they don't know. And
Yeah.
that's where you have to sort of let the judgment go and they're doing the best they can, you know?
Yeah.
It's
So
great.
you in your relationships basically is that I need more connection. I need that deeper connection with people and surface shit out the
Yes.
window.
Yeah. And at the same time, I've learned to meet people where they are and that some people just can't get there, you know? But but with people that are really close in my life, those relationships are deep and meaningful. They have to be.
Yeah. And the shifting, what I heard you say was that the realization of like it's the toxic people, going back to that, is that You may have realized that and were like, "Okay, I need them out of my life," but probably what also was happening is that you are evolving, you are changing, you're talking about things that they don't wanna talk about, or just you're different. You're a different person now. They slowly will go away because you're not meeting their needs either.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the interesting thing is, it wasn't really a conscious choice on my part. It just happened, right? Because
That's yeah, that's, I guess, what I was saying.
because that's the energy you put out in the world, and that's what you're going to get back. You know?
Well,
Yeah,
interesting, yeah. So, I have a couple other questions. You offer, like you talk about music, and, of course, I follow, like, when I see your TikToks, you'll, like, say some things. Beside your book, is there coffee in the fridge? Is there any other recommendations of, like, music or books or anything that you would suggest, like, that matter to you and that were helped you through your journey that other men might find helpful?
yeah. I read, as I mentioned, I read a lot, and so people like Wayne Dyer, Byron Katie, I Byron Katie touched me in a way that nothing else really did. It makes so much sense to me. Her real name's Katie Byron. Her pen name's Byron Katie, but her work is, I think, really helpful for men because it addresses ego and questioning the ego and sort of changing the thought process in a very
Mm,
simple way. It's not easy, but it's simple. The other one is Harville Hendrix. Um, Harville Hendrix has written a number of books about relationship interaction, and it really resonated with me. It helped me a lot. So those are the three that sort of jump off the page. In terms of music, um, you know, people can go to my Spotify and look at my meditation list. So when I teach people how to meditate, I use music. Um, I'll play a 3.5 minute song. We'll breathe on the way in, listen to the song, kind of follow and go wherever it's going to take you, and then come out and breathe on the backside of that. But I tell people, I'm trying to get people to understand that even if you shut down for 3 minutes, which isn't a lot, everybody's got 3 minutes, and put on your favorite song and just live through whatever that experience is, that you've now meditated. And there's no reason why you can't shut down 3 minutes a day to do that. And so I think any kind of music for me, music was a huge healing path for me. I connect with music in a way that I don't connect with anything else that's coming in from the outside world. And so I use that quite a bit for meditation, for sure.
okay. Yeah. And I'm glad that you said like everyone has 3 minutes. I think when people hear meditation, they get intimidated. And
Mm.
I gotta be honest, I mindfulness meditate, it's very challenging. Someone with ADD like myself,
Yeah.
like, hey, I just help people even when you're brushing your teeth, just focus. I'm brushing my teeth. I notice I'm brushing my teeth. Like
Okay.
start slow.
Yep.
But I like the music because these people connect to music, whether they are connected to music or the words, the lyrics. But I think that's a good way of starting for somebody that's like, okay, how do I do this?
Yeah. And there's a list, and there's
Okay,
a list
that's
in my book of books that I've read, authors that I really like, probably 20 or 30 authors. And there's also a list of musicians, songwriters that have, and actually,
who's your favorite?
yeah, who's my favorite? Um,
Who's your favorite songwriter, band,
uh,
musician?
if I had to pick one, it would be Bob Marley. I think that,
Really?
yeah, I think he was a prophet. Um, and then
Yeah.
I'd probably go Bono, U2 and Bono and James Taylor, but I also connect a lot with Green Day. So I'm sort of all over the place, but in terms of music, but
You're
um, huh?
you're eclectic,
I am eclectic.
meaning
Yeah, there's actually a chapter in my book, and again, I'm not saying go buy my book, but there's a chapter at the end of my book called "Music as a Healing Aid," and I actually have a list of 20 songs broken down by chapter in the book. So there's a section in each song that has meant something to me as it relates to that chapter. So yeah, answer your question is in that chapter, and it's pretty cool. I think it's cool. When I originally wrote the book, I had those lyrics in the book, but my publisher was like, "Hey, we're gonna get sued, so you can't do that." I was like, "Oh, okay." So we just put it in the
yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I connect a lot to music as well, and I knew that about your book, so that's kinda why I mentioned it,
Mm.
and I mean, I already have the songs that I want played at my funeral. I remind
So
people
fun.
of it. I have it
So
down.
fun.
Bon Jovi, Never Say Goodbye. So listen, if my husband doesn't have it played, I tell everybody, you better go, "Where's that Bon Jovi song she wanted?"
I told I told my daughter I have this memorial playlist on Spotify. Don't forget. She's like, Dad, it's 42 minutes. We're not going to do that. I'm like, all right, I'll cut it
So,
down. Oh, that's great.
but yeah, I like how you said though about the like what it meant to you because I mean, I hear songs and I think other people are like, "Is she kidding?" Like I could tell you where I might have been at that time,
Yeah,
what emotions I was going through, like that I connect that way, and I think that is helps a lot of people heal. So you kind of said it, but as we're kind of closing, I want to you say like you can use your past, and I always say your past is your present to create a healthier future,
yeah.
and you're doing that, and that's kind of like your story, right?
It's bringing a lot of meaning to the pain of why I went through what I went through, and um, most importantly for me, it's really understanding who I am and why. You know, that was the motivation, and yeah, I am flipping that story around and ending the cycle of destruction. That's how I look at
Yeah.
it.
Your pain now you're using your pain, it has a purpose. Like, first we have to understand it. Well, first we gotta feel it,
Yeah,
allow it, understand it, and then, like, be able to heal and, like you said, forgive, and then it like, how's it gonna change? Like, you're not just changing you and your family, you're impacting, like, so many other people, people that you won't even realize
yeah,
have been impacted by maybe one of your TikToks or, someone just was like, "Hey," handed them your book. But you're doing that
yeah,
by sharing your past and your journey and your healing and giving people hope.
yeah. I appreciate that. And that feels really good.
Yeah, good. So what message do you hope that men, in particular, and the people who love them take away from your journey?
I think that what I said earlier, that life's magic is in these small moments. It's not in these big things that we all should chase. And slowing down and being able to recognize those moments is really what's most meaningful. And
Yeah,
you can take whatever it is that you learn into your leadership as a man, whether you're a father or you've got a relationship with siblings, or you run a business, you're an athletic coach, whatever it is, you can then bring that into the world, and it will be recognized as a positive. And that, I think, is really what I'm trying to get people to understand. That's why I want them to move down this path.
yeah, I like that. I wrote this down. It's a skill set. You're letting them know that this is actually a skill set. It's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. For the families or like partners out there that are trying to support men who are in crisis, struggling, anxiety, depression. Any advice?
Well, like I said, I think creating a space for listening is really important, and asking a question like, well, setting up a boundary in a conversation. I will not respond. I will not judge. Is there something happening in your life that you want to share? And sometimes you have to ask that question 10 times over a week or two. The first answer is going to be, I'm fine. And then
Yeah,
you'll come back again and ask it again. But it's critically important that there isn't a response and there isn't a judgment and there isn't a solution. Just be there to listen and create that space. And then over time, it becomes more comfortable because the confidence build is, oh, I can share this. And there isn't going to be a reaction. The world isn't going to end.
yeah,
And then once that comfort continues to happen and you built that trust level, then you can expand the conversation into, well, let's look at maybe getting some support here. Let's find some help. Would you be okay with finding some help? And I think that asking questions is the best way to create that connection. It doesn't feel offensive or attacking, and it doesn't put you on the defensive. And I think men need to know that they can say, you know what, I'm having thoughts of fear, and I'm afraid, and not have a reaction to that is really important.
yeah. I like that. So I tried to scribble this down. First, I heard you say, like, you have to set up a safe space, allow space for the words, the conversations, and then be able to sit, listen, non-judgmentally, validate, just be able to hear, not fix, maybe ask some questions, but just sit with somebody at that moment,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say. And
Yes.
it will take maybe several times. You're slowly building, because what I heard you say really was you're helping the person build some trust,
Yes.
build some confidence, knowing it's safe, because you're in an environment that I don't know who created it, but that was created of like talking about your feelings, especially men, is not safe.
Yeah.
There's something wrong if you do it. So slowly setting that up.
Yep. It creates an environment of acceptance. And I think
That's it.
that's the word, right?
Yeah. So last, well, not last, where can people find you? I'll have it all in the show notes and stuff. Like, where can they find you, your book?
Yeah, the website for the book is there'scoffeeinthefridge.com. My TikTok is There's Coffee in the Fridge. Same thing with Instagram and Facebook. I'm in the process of launching jimrinere.com. It'll be hopefully out in the public in the next 30 days or so. But the best place is There's Coffee in the Fridge. That's the place to go.
Okay, great. And that's easy to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
I remember when I first saw, like, he came up on my feed. I would say it backwards, like, but I was telling people about it, and I'm like, oh, there's this book. And I've had clients buy it for their husbands or whatever, but I would always get it backwards. Like, I forget what I was saying, but it wasn't There's Coffee in the Fridge, but I had coffee and fridge, but it wasn't like in that order.
Yeah. That's
It,
awesome.
it could find you. It didn't matter. Like,
Yeah,
so much out there like that. So
I love it.
what are some final words of encouragement or inspiration for anyone out there who's struggling right now?
I think that the everybody's struggling with something, and you're not alone. I think that's really the most important thing, and it's okay. And seeking help will solve whatever it is that you're struggling with. So everybody's going through something, and that's okay, and you can be helped.
I love it. Yeah. They're not alone.
Yep.
Everyone's going through something, and they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to share?
No, I appreciate this very much, and like I said, I appreciate the work you're doing. It's awesome. I thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing and opening up this conversation for men so that we can start to change the dialogue and how people feel. And hopefully, more people will get healed and feel good and find there's coffee in the fridge.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Mending Piece by Piece podcast. If you lost a loved one and would like additional grief resource to help navigate you through your grief journey, you could purchase Mending Piece by Piece After Suicide Loss, Guided Grief Workbook and Journal to Heal the Survivor's Heart, or Mending Piece by Piece, a workbook and journal for navigating grief with hope on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And until next time, continue mending piece by piece, healing through grief, one step at a time.